one. Mission and vision clarity. Most people know our stated vision is love God, love people, and serve both. But what does that really mean? What does that look like in real life and in the church? Alignment issues of many things happening, many things that are good, but aligning them, bringing them all together so that we're marching in the same direction is an issue. Conversions, as I mentioned, a good rule of thumb for a church to grow and to be healthy is 10% every year who come to Christ. In other words, if we have 648 adults, which is what we have, who are contributing and say, this is my church, then 10% should be, that we should have a 10% conversion rate. That is 1 in 10 people lead someone to Jesus every year. Okay? So out of the 10 people sitting around you, one of you is going to lead someone to Christ. Maybe it's just invite them to church, but there's a process that's begun where a person actually comes to Christ. Now, by the way, this isn't our idea. Jesus said before he left, just before he ascended, just before his feet left the earth, he said, here's, disciples, what I want you to do. As you're going, as you're living, as you're moving through this life, make disciples. Make disciples. And that becomes our mission, one of the key elements that we should be about as the church and as individuals. So this isn't something that we're making up for some business reason. Ministry involvement is low. That is, the number of people sitting in the pew this morning, about 40% of you have a ministry where you are using your spiritual gifts that God has given you for the express purpose of serving others and encouraging them. And so if one of my gifts is teaching, then I'm using my gift of teaching at least once a week. Are you using your gift in a regular way? And not to be condemned if it's not official church stuff, but just as a measurement of how are our people doing at First Baptist Church, that number should be higher than 4 out of 10 involved, serving, have their hands on the plow, so to speak. 4 systems that need attention right away, as I mentioned: assimilation, communication, lay mobilization, leader development. One of the things we knew and we learned and was confirmed is that the communication issue, both in terms of celebrating what God is doing and letting people know in on some of the cool stories that are happening, is something we don't do a very good job at, as well as some of the things coming down the pike that we're doing that are in the future, letting people be a part of that and prepared and ready to engage in that. Let me give you a for instance. About a year ago or so, a man named John came to our church. John came to our church because he was invited by his son and his son's wife, and they had a little baby, and they started coming to church. And John began to see some change in his son and his son's family's life, and he was attracted and came to church with his wife. And John works for a large contractor that works worldwide and spends a lot of the time, a lot of the calendar year out of the country working on projects, and that right now is stationed in Libya, mostly a Muslim country. And he came to me, and we met at Smoky Mountain, and he said, how can he explained the situation. I have about 2,000 employees under me, and we put infrastructure in developing countries, roads, and so on. And he says, there are not many Christian churches that are alive where I work. And there are several Christians from America, as well as people from all over the world that are working employees, and we want to do church. Can we pipe your church service in? So you see a camera every Sunday here now, and you see some changes in lighting, and what we're doing is every Sunday we are recording, uploading, and they are downloading our worship service. So what I want you to do is say hi to everybody in Libya, all right? You ready? Let's say, hey, welcome, come on now. Now the fact is and I really want to say, the Lord bless you in your ministry in Libya and what's going on there, and we're praying for you, and we're glad God is working. Now, 99% of you didn't know that. Well, that's my fault. I'm just not. It's funny because I can speak okay from the pulpit, but I don't communicate very well. And so God is working on me, and my wife as well. on this problem. So anyway, that's just one example. Did you know? Probably not. 99.9% of you don't know that there's a family from Boise that lives in Japan. The man works for IBM, and he's over there for a couple of years, and every Friday night he gathers his family around, and we can say hi to him as well, and they gather around the TV, and they do church from First Baptist Church, Boise. Well, this is some cool stuff. And it's not just on a corporate level, it's individually what God is doing in people's lives. And so we definitely need to get better at this. Well, some goals that were given to us. Basically, Bill Hoyt, the leader of this assessment team, has a template that he says this is what a church, sort of a standard that a church that's healthy should have. And so I'm just going to give you some of the numbers that turned into goals that the assessment team that we're putting together is going to evaluate, look at, and create some. Perhaps they're greater, perhaps they're less. But one, an obvious one, is to clarify our vision so everyone knows and can join in, and we can align our ministries with that vision. Evangelism, he is suggesting that we have 70 conversions per year. For the size church we are, again, that's 1.4 of you leading someone to Christ out of 10. Okay, so the 10 people sitting around you, 1.4 of you are going to lead someone to Jesus this year. Now, that's a challenge for us. Many of you have never led someone to Jesus Christ. You've never made a disciple. Now, we don't have the power in ourselves, but the Spirit wants to work through us. And let me put it to you this way. Of the people you know in your circle, could be family, could be friends, could be co-workers, could be some people you don't like. God is preparing one or some to come to himself. And he has strategically placed you to interface, to have intersection with that person. It may be the last person you would ever imagine who would come to Christ in your circle of contacts, because you don't know what's happening below the surface. But the truth is, God has put you in a place that I will never be so that you can make disciples. Now, the fact is, I haven't pushed on this very hard, other than that's what we're all called to and in a general way. And so setting this goal of this is good. The week after Bill spoke to us, that afternoon, we had some workers in our house doing this remodeling, and my wife started inviting them to church. Now, if you know my wife, she can share Christ and brag about our church to anybody, anytime, clerk, gas station, wherever. Well, she started inviting these two workers to church, and then she started talking about Jesus. And when it was all done, I go, wow, that was pretty assertive. She says, well, we got to reach our 70. I'm thinking, well, you keep that up, and you'll get 35 of them all by yourself. I wish I was as evangelistic as my wife is. Well, related to that, the other goal is 50% of us, one half of us, contributing to someone's salvation. Let me just ask you this. When's the last time you prayed for someone in that circle of yours to become a Christian, specifically by name? Ask God to work in their heart in such a way that they would be drawn to Jesus Christ. Now, you have understood his forgiveness. You have understood his love. You've experienced his peace. You know the joy. Maybe not today, but you know about it, and yet so often we're so shy. We're so guarded about this. Mobilization, the goal is 66% of us would be engaged with our spiritual gifts and with our abilities and so on in some specific ministry. 70% would be involved in a small group. 7 out of 10 of us would be a part of a small group. It could be a team, ministry team, or a growth group or whatever. And then a challenge for us in the area of giving. He says that our church, doing the math, contributes 4.1% of our income to the church tithe. The tithe is 10%, so he says if all of our giving units, we have 648 giving units, okay, people that have given from $1 to whatever. I don't know what you give, by the way. What he's saying is if every giving unit tithed on their yearly income, this church would have $1 million more per year. annually.